Well, I think we share certain qualities, but he has no hair, as you know, and I haven't rocked a goatee since the '90s, when young men rock goatees. So I think Jackson always thought of me for the role. So I think I had certain qualities, and it probably didn't hurt that I was also like a skinny guy with glasses who talk like this. Oh, well, the main ones are Dr. Venture, the Phantom Limb, and Jonas Jr.
Hmm.
And yeah, the first one, he just asked me to be Dr. Venture. I got this show because Jackson Public, the creator of the show, was an old friend of mine in New York, and who was a roommate of mine. Not Jackson, but I lived with this guy who was a friend of Jackson's, and so I met him through him, and he got to know me a little bit. And then when he was creating the pilot for the show, he just asked me to do this show, and it was the Venture Brothers, and he explained who this character Dr. Venture was. And the first day in the booth, we tried to figure out the voice, and I started out thinking I would be a kind of wacky scientist guy. So I kind of did this slightly rubbery voice, sounded like a Billy West kind of voice. And then Jackson just kept going, yeah, less of that. And I go, okay, how's this? He goes, less. Okay, less. And finally, I was just talking my own voice. He goes, that's it. So it was really just my voice with a different attitude. You know, Dr. Venture's a little more high-strung and excitable. And then the other ones, just I think he asked me to do Phantom Limb, and you know the way he was drawn and described, he was kind of a suave kind of character, so it just seemed right to do a kind of Englishy voice and get a sort of lower register to differentiate him from Dr. Venture. And then Jonas Jr. actually went through two different voices. Jonas Jr. was introduced in an episode where he pops out of Dr. Venture because he's like a parasitic twin. And in the original one, he was kind of a little scary and evil. So I almost did a sort of Clint Eastwood kind of thing like that. But then when they brought him back for the next season, Jackson wanted him to be sort of arrogant but affable. So then it became more of a sort of a Charlton Heston voice. As a sort of old school kind of guy with this weird kind of mid-Atlantic kind of dialect going on. So that's how those three voices happen. And then early in the show, I would do like pickup characters, just like cop on the corner, guy in the bar, but I don't do those so much anymore. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I love everything. I've done a lot of TV guest shots, like on crime shows, procedurals, where I either play the red herring, the suspect. Occasionally, I'm the actual bad guy. And I enjoy playing those parts, but one of the things I love most was I was on this Hulu show for 3 seasons called Difficult People, where I played the sort of nice boyfriend of the main character. The main character, played by Julie Klausner, was a kind of neurotic, high-strung, kind of brassy girl, and I was her sort of more circumspect boyfriend who was essentially a good guy, and no one ever really cast me as sort of the nice, supportive boyfriend. So in a weird way, that was a challenge, not to be a weirdo, a killer, or a freak. So I enjoyed that opportunity.
No, I love that character, and we're really hoping it would come back.
Yeah, well, the show ran 3 seasons and then they canceled it, so what can you do? Well, yeah, I was an actor in New York. And this is like a long time ago, like late 80s, early 90s, and I had my own theater company, but we were working off Broadway. We weren't really making any money doing this. We all had day jobs. And I had a friend who was an actor from that scene downtown in New York, and he started to do voiceovers and was doing really well. And I asked him, do you have any advice? And he said, yeah, you should meet my agent. So I met this guy's agent. I didn't even have a tape. This is not the way it usually works, by the way. I just got lucky. But this voiceover agent took a shine to me. He liked me and he started sending me out on auditions, which at that time, it was just auditions for like commercial voiceovers, like for TV commercials and radio commercials. I wasn't really going out on much animation then. And then after 50 auditions, I remember I kept a notebook of all my auditions, and I booked the 50th one, which was a regional store in Washington, D.C. It was a computer store. And for the audition, they wanted a voice that sounded like David Hyde Pierce, which I could pull off. And then slowly I started auditioning for like animation in New York here and there, and I actually did like one episode of Daria, like in the late 90s.
Oh, really?
And little things. And then I started to get some TV commercials where it was like animated characters and things. But then separate from that, like I said, Jackson Public just knew me personally. So that wasn't through an agent. There was no audition for the Venture Brothers. And then I moved to LA. I lived in New York for 20 years, and then I moved to LA 11 years ago. And I got a new voiceover agent in LA, and there's a lot more animation happening in LA. So since then, I've auditioned and been offered a little more sort of animation. But that's how it all sort of started. Oh yeah, I mean, I love doing film and TV. And what I actually really miss is theater. I used to do a lot of theater in New York, because, you know, it's a big theater town. And since moving to LA, I really haven't done any for like over a decade. So I miss that. I'd sort of love to go back and do a play. But yeah, like each of those things have their own challenges. And when you're an actor, I think every actor experiences this. Each time you get a new job, you're kind of like, what am I going to do? How am I going to approach this? I don't even know what I'm doing. Why am I here? And then you kind of figure it out. So it's fun to sort of go from job to job and be challenged, you know, and just try to be better and learn from when you don't think you were as good, you know. I'm in the director Richard Linklater's next movie, the great director who made Dazed and Confused and School of Rock. He kind of goes between sort of independent films and more, you know, commercial type things. He's a really talented guy, and he's made an adaptation of a novel called Where'd You Go, Bernadette? It's a comic novel by a woman named Maria Semple, and and I have a really fun part in that. At least I filmed a fun part. You never know what's going to happen in movies or TV, because sometimes they can cut scenes. But I'm ostensibly in that. And then I've had some fun TV jobs recently. I did an episode of Documentary Now, that very funny IFC show that's like a parody of documentaries. And I also just did an episode of Amy Sedaris' show, At Home with Amy Sedaris, which is like a parody of like a Martha Stewart type show. It's all scripted, it's all fake, but so I played a character on that. So yeah, just going along doing sort of fun projects and always waiting for the next thing to come up. Yeah, well, mostly it's the Venture Brothers, because that's sort of the thing that I'm here representing. You know, we're doing a panel and other actors from the show are here. So it's mostly that, but you never know, like people will mention films and TV things, and I've also done voices on a bunch of video games, and sometimes like really sort of obscure things will come up that people just remember, like one episode of some show that I did like years ago, you know, so that's always fun. Yeah. You sort of never know what's going to come up, but here it's mostly about the Venture Brothers. That's been like and that's obviously been my longest running continuing job, which is nice.